Yeah, I think I remember this dude. I remember G Mules. I liked his videos because he had a very positive and excited tone, which is like really good. Like I like more excited, the more like polite and nicer videos. But but yeah, I like this dude's videos just because he has a more politer tone about the things he's talking about. So I'm curious about what he's gonna say. The eternal MMO problem. I assume he's gonna be either talking about the class changes or the difficulty of the normal raids. Because
RPGs have
those are like the current like two biggest topics. Casuals are finding normal content too hard, and high-end players are not enjoying the easiness of their jobs, or whatever the fuck else the arguments are.
always been a hot
Ah,
topic. The
don't yell
game's
at me.
too hard, the game's too easy. Can we please just get content? These are things
Can we please just get fucking content?
I've heard throughout my many years of playing MMORPGs. And the funny thing with Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail, it's introduced kind of a new direction for the game. It's experimenting hardcore, not in that way, with new ideas for fight design, and this goes from regular dungeons to normal trials to extremes and now even the raids. And to me, it seems as if the pace of the game has gone up a decent chunk at least. All the while
Pacing? What do you mean pacing?
experimenting with new ways to telegraph information to the player and to be more creative in terms of the actual fight design. And these are things that I think should be applauded because of everything I've done so far in terms of actual gameplay content in Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail, I've heavily enjoyed. There was like one dungeon in the expert roulette which just had like the we're gonna put two things under two cups and spin them around, keep track of them. That I'm like, okay, but like that's it. Everything else, and especially Arcadian, I've absolutely been enthralled by. I've loved this expansion when it comes to the actual gameplay of it.
You have two separate groups, like two separate sides of Arcadian players right now. People who are fucking loving it. People who are enjoying the absolute hell out of this, even just out of normal raids. Like even the high-end raiders, ultimate fucking raiders, they're having fun in normal raids, and not just the ultimate raiders, the casuals, the role players. Quite a few of them are just like coming out and saying, you know what, I like the new step up in difficulty. I like, that the game. It feels like the game is taking me a bit more seriously. You know what I mean? But there's also a bunch of these fucking crybabies that are literally just like, normal difficulty too hard. I'm gonna skip the rating tier. Fucking what, brother in Christ? What do you mean? How much of a fucking obstacle this is for you? This is something you can do a couple more tries and you will clear it even easier than you imagine it would be. Just a bit of practice is what you need. But if this is the fucking obstacle for you, my guy, you should not be raiding. You should literally do anything fucking else in this game. Try PvP, man. Have fun.
And with conversations erupting now over the actual difficulty of the normal mode raids and the content overall in Dawn Trail, I want to take a minute to talk about gameplay in Final Fantasy XIV. And I mainly want to talk about introducing gameplay into the MSQ, but we have to cover a few bases first. 1. Final Fantasy XIV
Gameplay into the MSQ? I'm very like disconnected and dissociated from the conversation right now. Is he talking about specifically the raids or the stuff we do in MSQ? Because the raids are optional content. It is a blue quest.
14 is an old game. It's been out for over 10 years. And if you don't vary up the gameplay at some point there, then people who have played enough will grow a bit tired of seeing the same old tricks time and time and time again. Varying up the gameplay and introducing new things that
this is like how a lot of these people fucking complain, like, ooh, I like this class better in Heaven's Sword. Like, or I like this class Stormblood. Ooh, like these motherfuckers that complain because they just don't want to, like, embrace any new change. Like, obviously not every change is good, but you have so many people just literally just complaining, just for the sake of complaining. It is maddening at this point. It is legit maddening.
To tackle and to learn and overcome is something that I don't only think is a good thing, I think it's needed. And Dawntrail has been super refreshing in that regard, even as somebody who has never really played hardcore in Final Fantasy XIV, but has played the game since Stormblood. Every piece of content feels super refreshing, especially when I'm going to do my roulettes and I get older dungeons and stuff. Everything feels far slower. I vastly prefer the pace of Dawntrail in that regard, and the mechanics just feel as if they are a breath of fresh air. They are fun to overcome, learn, and play around. And at the end of the day, entertainment and what you find fun is going to be subjective, and not everyone will find this enjoyable. However, I feel as if the vast majority of people I've interacted with, or have seen comments from, have overall been really receptive to the actual gameplay of Dawntrail. And there's a phenomenon I see, especially when it comes to MMORPGs, that I think needs to be talked about, and that is this hyper catering to the 1%. And I'm not just talking about the upper 1%.
Huh? What does that mean? What do you mean hyper catering? Look, no, 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 no. No, this does not apply to 14. Like the hyper catering to the 1% happens in World of Warcraft, because there's nothing else to do in that game besides raid and Mythic Plus. It is the content that only the top 1% will enjoy. But also, why is that dude's name Scam Artist? But like, in 14, there is no 1%. There are raiders, there are casuals, there are role players, there are housing enthusiasts, there are crafters. There's like way too many groups. If we're talking specific about PvE, yeah, it's gonna be, you know, there's gonna be various difficulties, and we have so many of them. But the game is absolutely not catering to anything. They have various difficulties for various different groups of players. Just the players are simply complaining that they're not allowed to get the rewards from higher end content that other people have worked fucking hard for. Because like I don't know. It's like I don't believe there is a 1%. Because like there's too much other content in the game for it to just be catered to the 1% of the raiders. So it's hard to tell where this point is going, but at least let me hear it out again.
See, especially when it comes to MMORPGs, that I think needs to be talked about, and that is this hyper catering to the 1%. And I'm not just talking about the upper 1%, I'm namely talking about the bottom 1% here. Let's face it, it's a video game, and at the end of the day, there's going to be a subsect of people that are just not good at it, and that's fine. 14 is a...
Okay, you know what? I take it back. I forgot about that 1%. You know what? I apologize. Yes, I'm just starting to see where he's coming with this now.
Game with varying difficulty modes and types of content.
I was not aware of your game, sir. I apologize. I didn't know you were chill like that.
So that you can probably find a place if you want to get better, or just settle into your niche. There's nothing wrong with that, however, and this is not a 14 specific problem, I found this everywhere. There are people that almost take pride in being bad at the game and act as if it's almost a personality trait. And it's very similar in thinking to when you come across people that act as if being good at the game is a personality trait, just on the opposite end.
You toxic elitist! I bet you're toxic because you cleared ultimate. Ooh, you're wearing ultimate legend title. Ooh, toxic elitist. Look at this piece of shit.
The spectrum, where they feel as if the game should cater to them specifically and only them. Or
oh no, fuck those people. Look, at one point you gotta understand, like, some of the content is gonna be put into the game specifically to cater to the people who are putting a lot of hard fucking work into this game. Or, you know, have a fucking job and can afford a carry, I guess. But it's like, the entitlement is always so baffling to me. It's like, it's always like, I don't want my toys, I want the toys those people are having. Well, you're gonna have to work a bit for those toys. No, don't wanna. This is bullshit. Shut the fuck up then. Like that whole fucking, axolotl fucking situation, when they added the axolotl mount to P12S, the forum post, like, no, the raiders should not be getting the fucking cute mount. How fucking, there's like even like gifs of that shit on Discord. Hold on, let me, this is the Discord that's not live yet, so don't worry, I'm not sending it to anyone. Where was it? Hold on. Ignore this, please. Ignore. Yeah, there you go. I don't even need to look up. Make the axolotl mount that drop from Aether Front instead of Savage. No! This shit is a meme. I feel cheated out of my $15. You also have these motherfuckers complaining normal difficulty is too hard, or that Criterion is too fucking hard for the reward like it gives. No, Criterion should just have better rewards, but it shouldn't be fucking easier. So many people are just complaining because they feel entitled to a clear. And like, I've always said this, and you can look up some of my older videos on these conversations and topics. I've always said this, that even casuals can clear ultimates. You can. It's just gonna take you a lot fucking longer than it does to a player who's actually constantly improving their, like, their skills and efficiency in the game. It's gonna take you a lot longer if you take it casually, but it's not impossible. You can do it. I believe in you. But you're not gonna. You're welcome to prove me wrong, but I know you're not gonna. Here's a crazy concept. Learn to play the game, right? Like, motherfuckers feel cheated out of their money of the game because they can't get one fucking thing in the game that the Hind Raiders are getting. Excuse me? You got access to literally everything else. What else do you fucking want? You want the cake and you want to eat it? Motherfucker.
Or they use exaggeration and hyperbole to try and prove their point, when it's really a shaky foundation. Or act as if there's nothing in the game that caters to their super specific niche, that when you stop to think about it, most people wouldn't.
Like, I appreciate how polite this person is being by verbally, like, expressing the point, but skill issue, honestly. It's like, I can only, like, explain this so many times. It's just like, I know it's a mean thing to tell someone it's like skill issue, but that's what it is. What is stopping you from just like practicing a rotation? There's so many resources and information. We have literally discords with like job mentors that will literally are willing to answer your questions. Go on LPDU as well. That's for ultimates, but it's like you can always ask people there. Like, why do you do this? What is the like a good way to do this? How can I optimize my job? People will literally ask you for your logs so they can help you optimize and improve. Like, Final Fantasy XIV, compared to a lot of other games, has so many people willing to fucking go out of their way to help you. 14 has this. So many people willing to go out of their way just to fucking help you. Free of charge. They will give you advice, they will point you to the resources. They will help you with some practice parties. Like, that's what I was doing yesterday on stream. I was just joining random, like, extreme parties that were just practicing or learning, and I was just helping them, like, go through mechanics and just, like, helping them clear. So many people are like... And these motherfuckers are still somehow so fucking entitled because they have to put just a little bit more effort into improving to get a reward. What the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me? Is there anything else you want, Your Majesty? You just got put up in P9 for raids, could cry. Yeah. Oh boy.
Wouldn't particularly care about. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit when it comes to Dawntrail as well. We're always going to, especially when they try to introduce new ways to telegraph information, even if at the end of the day it's a Final Fantasy XIV mechanic, danger zone, safe spot, go to the safe spot. At the end of the day, no matter what you do, there's going to be some people that simply
stand still and let mechanic resolve.
They don't want to play the game, they don't want to interact the interface with the game, and they want something that requires absolutely no brain.
Sir, if you ever see this video, you have second wind. It's now 800 potency. Wait, is it 800? Hold on. Yeah. Second wind is 800 potency. It's your friend. Use it.
Brain power whatsoever. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. I take issue with the idea that the game should cater to that mindset specifically, and this idea that quite a few people in MMORPGs tends to have, where they exaggerate this idea idea that this
I apologize.
audience is
He
way
used
larger
blood
than
death.
it
That's
actually
good.
is.
But use your
Again,
second
there's
wind as
nothing
well.
wrong with being bad at the game. The issue I tend to find is when this mindset interferes with actual game design. I think we have seen this in the MSQ of Dawntrail. If you go and turn the page back to Endwalker, Endwalker had quite a few gameplay scenarios within its MSQ that varied up the flow and tried to incorporate storytelling through the gameplay. You can think of sections like the Thancred infiltration section that gave us the infamous meme, "This is Thancred," which felt extremely Metal Gear inspired.
I like that bit, but it was also way too fucking long. It was way too fucking overstretched. The extra mechanic for that one fucking story bit was just, I don't know. It's not a raiding mechanic to sneak around, but it's like...
And then you had the escape section from Golemald, where you took the role of a Gallian soldier trying to escape the city. And if you remember back...
That part fucking made me feel so miserable. I get what they were trying to prove with that part. Story-wise, it was amazing. But I would not level up alts knowing I would have to go through that fucking part again.
Back in the day, there were quite a few people vocal about how they had such disdain for these sections of the game. And I think Square Enix overcompensated and just didn't have any sections like that when it came to Dawntrail. The only sections that really felt unique into the gameplay were those 1v1 scenarios against, say, Bakul Jaja, where you played as Wuklamat, or against Golul Jaja, where you played as the Warrior of Light, or that one scenario that was like totally not a child where you fought the shade of Golul Jaja, and that's kinda it. Now, I'm not even the biggest fan of those sections from Endwalker, but I don't think the existence of those sections was the issue. I think it was more the execution, because the gameplay loops you got, namely when it came to the Golemald section as a soldier, we got like a scuffed gladiator or a paladin kit. It was extremely slow. That was just boring because it wasn't engaging in terms of an actual fun gameplay loop, but I liked the idea of having a section that was intense, where we didn't feel quite as powerful as we normally do.
But you also need to keep in mind, we also do it just once. If there's something that requires like specifically complaining or analysis or anything, it probably shouldn't be the story mechanics. It probably shouldn't be anything related to story, but specifically the content that is farmable, the content that is redoable multiple times, specifically for that is meant to be kind of re-engaged repeatedly. That one part, yeah, I get it. It's like it's there. People are gonna be like divided on whether it's good or not, but it's like at the end of the day, you're gonna do it once, and that's it. You're gonna do it once, and you'll never do anything like that again. Maybe, unless we're going back to Garlemald.
At the end of the day, Final Fantasy XIV is a video game, and incorporating story into the gameplay loop is something that should be upheld. It should be something actively worked on and iterated, not shied away from, because the first iteration of this wasn't the most well executed. And I think it wasn't the most well executed because of this inherent fear of the skill issue. The MSQ is something that everyone is expected to be able to accomplish. That includes that very bottom end of players. Again, there's nothing wrong with not being good at a video game, but it's this overcompensation, in my opinion, that leads to subpar gameplay mechanics that are both forgettable and that don't add much to the
Overcompensation of what? People aren't really overcompensating for anything. They're just straight up saying, this is too hard. It's too hard. No, it's too hard. They don't have anything to compensate with at that point.
actual loop, or the experience on the whole. Like that one gladiator section where we were supposed to feel really slow and not powerful. That's fine, but the problem is when you have an MMO gameplay loop, when it's overly slow, it becomes uninteresting with too much frequent rhythmic downtime. Hotkey-based combat is not that fun when it's really slow, with too few abilities. It becomes really stale, unresponsive, and just uninteresting and unrewarding. And if you agree with that sentiment, then I think naturally your logical conclusion would be, okay, well, to add more on top of it and add to the pace. The problem is, especially if you've played MMOs for years, you'll understand that if you give anyone a rotation that is not their character or their job, they act as if like they're a melting block of cheese in a fondue pot.
Yeah, that does apply to people who have played MMOs for years, but some people just don't. Some people play League for years, and then they decided, I'm gonna try an MMO. I heard 14 is kind of cool, and they're a new player. People need to remember that there's not just shit players that are bad at the game in this game. There's also just straight up new players. And for new players, that fucking rotation might be something fresh and new.
Part of something. Like, they don't understand what to do because nobody wants to take the 2 seconds needed to stop and read the tooltips. Even if the rotations are extremely easy, you don't want to make these sections too involved because at the end of the day, they're not going to be repeated forms of content. They're just like a bite-sized piece of gameplay for that one situation to make it a bit unique. Now, I think there are still ways to make that fun and engaging. That is by simply upping the pace of the GCD, adding to the visual spectacle, having great music, making just a spectacle overall, having good enemy design, stuff like that. There's multiple ways to tackle this problem, and I don't think just shying away from the concept overall is necessarily the way to go about it. The MSQ and the
What was the fucking point of this video again? The more I think about it, catering to the 1%, raid design, MSQ mechanics. What was the point of this video again?
content for the MSQ will always be easy by design because everyone is expected to be able to make their way through it. There's nothing wrong with that. My issue is when you use that as an excuse to shy away from interesting gameplay scenarios in lieu of just making it a cutscene. Because at the end of the day, it's a video game. It's not a book, it's not an anime, it's not a movie, it's not a comic, it's a video game. And video games are inherently interactive media. And when your sole way to tell and further a story is through just basic cutscenes and dialogue and essentially yapping, it erodes the quality of the story and the storytelling you could have.
Don't agree. Don't agree. Because it's like, I'm guessing he's talking now specifically about the story. Again, I think I might have lost the plot. But some of the yapathons that we've had, because again, you need to remember that this is an MMO. The moment they start implementing more and more fucking cutscenes, animated cutscenes, more interactivity, more voice cutscenes, the bigger the size of the game is going to be. Especially for something that's just going to be the 1% of your total gameplay. You've completed the story, you've max leveled out. What the fuck else are you going to do? You have completed 13 gigabytes out of the, whatever the fuck the size was, like 60 gigabytes of the new expansion, or 40 or 20, I don't remember. I think it was like, okay, so you completed like the 5 gigabytes. Because that is a lot of voice lines, this expansion. You shouldn't be basing a lot of like specific analysis of the game in its entirety based on just that. Because it's always going to be the minimal amount. Like, even if you play from Realm Reborn from the very start, do every fucking quest, every cut, like, even if you do every relic weapon on your way there, the moment you get to max level and you completed every story, it's still going to be the least amount of time you're going to spend in the game. The least amount of the time. Because, like, let's say, for example, a good example is, on average, people are completing the story in about 2-3 days in Dawn Trail, right? I feel like it's fair to say. People who aren't milking shit for content, I mean. Like, people who are specifically going through the story, reading everything, they've done, normal raids already. It's like, people who just go through the story at their own pace, and they just completed it within, like, hell, you know what? I'll even extend it. Let's say 5 days. 5 days to complete an expansion story, right? Realm Reborn has been shortened. You can still do that in 5 days as well. Realm Reborn, 5. Heaven Sword, 10. Stormblood, 15. Shadowbringer, 20. 20 days. Endwalker, 25. And Dawn Trail, 1 month. 30 days-ish. On average, that you essentially now need a 1 month to complete the entirety of the game at your own... You're talking like a month, yeah. So you need to complete the game at your own pace in around a month. I think that is a fair assumption that you can complete the entirety of the main story with some additional content within a month, if you play steadily at your pace every day, right? I know I'm not like the average player, but playtime. 523 days. Take away 1 month of gameplay. What the fuck have I been doing for the other 490 days in this game? And this is like, in terms of like 24 hours. This is not if you don't include sleep. What have I been doing for the rest of this? for the rest of that time, I've been literally doing anything fucking else. So basing the limbs are RPing, maybe, sure, why not? I've been to the clubs. I've hung out in the clubs. I've been a dancer too. I wanted to see what the fuck is happening over there. I went to music clubs too, role playing clubs. I've gone to theater clubs. Uh, there was like some D&D clubs as well, some magical like role play. I've gone to I've raided. I've done Ultimate Prog. I've party finded. I had statics. I had events done, maps. I literally made a small D&D campaign in the basement of my FC house, and we played that as well. There's so much shit to do in this game. Why are we basing like the entirety of the expansion on like the most menial shit? Even Zebla fucking made like my Dawntrail impression, and it's like 15 minutes of her talking about that she leveled up Pictomancer and Viper, and that there's also a graphical update. That's your fucking impression of Dawntrail? What the fuck are we milking right now? Are we good? Like, I know we didn't have any content and we focused on drama when Endwalker was like during its quiet time, but the expansion happened. Can we just focus the fuck up for 2 seconds? Lock it in for a bit. Why are we basing an impression of a game based on like the most menial shit? Nothing against the guy, but it's like we're having a whole conversation, a whole topic about like I'm not entirely sure what is the conversation is anymore, because I'm guessing he's talking about the prolonged story, maybe the MSQ mechanics. I don't know. I'm not sure. I thought he was going to be talking about the raids, assuming by the start of the video, but now I'm not entirely sure. Mind you, I like that the way he talks and the way he explains. There's like no negativity. It's a very unbiased kind of like stance, the way he at least expresses himself. But I'm lost now. Are we really basing the entire fucking expansion based on just like the 1% of your gameplay?
For instance, those 1v1 fights we got, even back in Endwalker against Xenos, and in Dawntrail against Galul Jaja and Bakul Jaja, they were fun. At least they were to me. And they were fun because they are interactive with enough going on, even for that small scene, to where I was always engaged with the game, and I didn't feel as if there was this odd downtime where I just couldn't do anything. And these sections furthered the actual narrative going on in an interesting way, to varying degrees, but they still furthered the narrative through the gameplay. So it's not like it can't be done in Final Fantasy XIV, or that MMOs for some reason are this special concept to where you have to shy away from gameplay because you have to cater to the lowest of the low skill level users. I think it's doing a disservice to the vast majority of people who can actually, rub more than 2 brain cells together to play the game, but also just the people who want a fun game to play. When you started the Dawn...
Hold on, did he jump over that? Yo, did they fix jumping over between platforms
skill
like that?
level users.
Hold on.
I think it's doing a disservice to the vast majority of people who can actually, rub more than 2 brain cells together to play the game, but also just the people who want a fun game to play.
But someone else fell off. Someone else fell.
When you started the Dawntrail MSQ, how long did it take to get to an actual situation with gameplay that wasn't just a cutscene or characters talking on the screen? It took a long time, didn't it? A really long time. Many hours. And like at the end of the day, Final Fantasy XIV is a story and a game that we all go into expecting a lot of talking and a lot of cutscenes. There's nothing wrong with that, but you cross a point, like a line in the sand, and I think this line varies depending upon the game and the expectations going into the game. So I have a lot more leeway for Final Fantasy XIV than I would have for other games. I go into it expecting all of this. But even then, you can still cross that line to where you need a bit more just something. And I wouldn't argue that this was the biggest issue that I had with Dawntrail's MSQ, but it was one of the significant issues I had.
Is this whole conversation specifically about wanting more interactive moments in the MSQ, but he feels that it's being catered to the lower skill players by the lack of those instances? Am I understanding this right? You gotta understand, this is a baby game for babies. It's gotta be easy. There's gotta be not a lot of these scenes. Like, that is a normal Final Fantasy experience. There's gotta be a lot of yapping. A lot of yapping. Titus needs to tell Yuna, you need to laugh like this. Ha 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 ha. And then that's a meme. But, a lot of, like, these moments. But not everything should be interactive fucking combat scene. Not everything needs to be that fucking Kratos quick time scene where he's trying to pull off his daughter off his leg. Not everything needs to be like that. If I'm understanding the point correctly right now. Or like, do people know what I'm talking about? Hold on. This is what I'm talking about. Is this the gameplay we want? You need to mash your... You need to mash the button to push your daughter away from you. Is this what we're looking for? Is this the kind of gameplay we want? More gameplay. Come on, Kratos. You got this. You're only a god of fucking war. Is this the gameplay we want? Not everything is gonna be Final Fantasy 16. This is an MMO for babies. Chill the fuck out for a bit.
With it, and that I think it was wholly uninteresting from a mechanical perspective. There's an entire train section where we operated a turret in the cowboy land in Shaloni. That wasn't a gameplay scenario, and maybe it was because they couldn't figure out how to do a turret section in Final Fantasy XIV, in which case I just point them back to the Pixie quests and say you can do some version of this, or don't have us be the one on the turret, have Alize be on it or something while we fight on the back of it. There was an entire situation back in the level 90 quest where Wuklamat screwed off to go tame an alpaca. That should have been a gameplay scenario. There's content extremely similar to that in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with taming.
So this is just kind of boils down to you not getting more shit to do. Uh-huh. Well, to be fair, there's plenty of shit to do. It's just like you don't get enough interactive moments. I can kind of see the frustration with that, especially with how long the Dawn Trail MSQ was. But you can have an interactive fucking scene everywhere. There's a reason. You need to understand. There's a reason in Realm Reborn when you go for an MSQ roulette. There's a reason you have to walk between fucking cutscenes. Everything has its pacing, and the pacing isn't based for people who want to constantly be in the action. Some people need the pacing between cutscenes just because of they're more story driven. At Final Fantasy, whether you like it or not, even if it's an MMO with like a massive fucking PvE community and a big PvE scene, it's still a main number Final Fantasy game. It's always got to be the main focus on the yapping, on the story. It's not always going to be interactive story. I think a lot of people failed to understand for once we're not the main character though. Sorry, I was dying. I don't think that is the issue he's bringing up here. That is like a separate fucking issue that people are talking about. But it's like, way too many. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's too many complaints from people. There's like two sides. People who are basing an experience of Dawn Trail based on just the fucking story, and the story is always gonna be. Like, it's got to depend on perspective. It's got to depend on what kind of player is playing it. Some people fucking hate it. They hate that they're not the main character. They hate Wuklamat. They hate the story. They hate that it's long. Meanwhile, the rest of the other side are just like chilling the fuck out. They're enjoying this. Finally, I'm not the one with dealing with problems. Ooh, Wuklamat, you have a problem happening? Ooh, I'm sorry to hear that. Anyways, I'm gonna be drinking my pina coladas. Tell me when I need to talk to you again. And you walk into the onto the beach, vibing. Meanwhile, Wuklamat is stressing. Not everything needs to be a fucking interactive scene. Go do some raids if you want to be interacted. Do you really want a full interactive scene, like unskippable turret scene here, just because you want to transition into the next map? No, stop it. No, we need less unskippable shit. With how long the fucking story was this expansion.
Having chocobos out in the wild. A concept that could have easily worked in Final Fantasy XIV with having to sneak up against the alpaca and maybe tame it with rudimentary button inputs or something. It didn't need to be the most drawn out and long form content ever, just something to make it interactive. Now, funnily enough, I don't think there's an easy answer to this problem that Final Fantasy...
No, there is it's not an easy answer, but it is a very simple one. Everything needs to be within particular amount. You can't have, because like this is not Metal Gear Solid. This is not any other game that can be named. This is not Sekiro. This is not Elden Ring, where you practically need to be the one to put everything in movement. This is a story game. Story games are always going to be mainly focused around the yappening. You level up, you do some fighting, and everything else is going to be the yappening. You know? But it's better to keep people wanting rather than have people frustrated by too much. Because it took us long enough for the MSQ roulette to be shortened from 8 people to 4, and then also kind of change for it to be a bit more pace relevant rather than too long, you know? It's better to have people wanting rather than just overbear people with too much shit to do. Again, you need to keep in mind, not everyone is into being constantly within combat in action. Some people are there at a much slower pacing than you.
Fantasy 14 has, if you even think it's a problem. I think one of the solutions Square Enix has kind of fallen on is when they need to do extra gameplay sections is to make them stealth missions. I legit forgot that 14, not
That is an issue, by the way. That is something I consider an issue. There is way too many fucking quests where you have to be stealthy and fucking stalk someone. Can we get rid of a few of those? Like, what the fuck? I was doing my physical range quest, like the roll quest, and there was more fucking sneaking around. I was fucking fuming. Why are there so many of these fucking missions?
Not even that Dawn Trail had as many of these little stealth sections as it did. They were so forgettable to me because they all boiled down to essentially the same thing. Just hide behind something periodically because the NPC you're following will sometimes turn around if he feels like it. And looking back on it in Endwalker, the Thancred mission and...
To be fair, that's like the main mechanic of most of the Metal Gear Solid games. People aren't really complaining there, are they?
And the Escape from Garlemald sections are either Metal Gear-inspired stealth sections, or they're like sections that heavily incentivize the use of stealth. And these sections can be really cool in terms of the intensity they bring to the table, but I also think an idea that Square Enix maybe should take to heart is the idea that you can make a gameplay section feel really good, yet still be really mechanically easy and simplistic. Just by making the visual spectacle or the feeling and the tone of it feel good. And I know that sounds a bit contradictory, right? I understand that. But we have gameplay in this game, like in the Gold Saucer, where you're on that turret section. That could translate very well. I was actually watching one of Preach Gaming's streams about Dawn Trail, and someone in his chat brought this up. It's a great point. You have a section in the Gold Saucer that is pretty much all that you need when it comes to that train bed. Just lift that gameplay and put it there. It would work. It doesn't need to be hard or mechanically complex, because at the end of the day, it's the MSQ, it's going to be really easy. We expect that. But the feeling of it has to be good. The invasion of Tulio Lol, that...
I'm gonna be real. Oh my god, what the fuck is happening here? I'm gonna be real. I can see the point he's making, but I don't agree with it. Just because, like, that is a very, very fucking brash request. You want more interactive combat scenes that are simple enough, but are fun and interesting. When you just simplify most of these sentences and you just voice them out verbally out loud, you kind of start seeing the issue. Why there's not more of these. Because A, it's going to take ages to implement so many of them into the game, because once you start having some of these, you need to have more. And as well as, like, you're just making some of these scenes fucking unskippable and unbearable. You're making the MSQ longer than it fucking needs to be at this point. And you want it to be interesting for, like, the entirety of, like, 2 minutes that you're gonna be doing it? Come on. Let's be reasonable here. Our time is not that valuable, but it's like, we shouldn't be, like, spending it doing a Golden Saucer event. And if they add events like that, for like from the Golden Saucer, you know what's gonna be happening? People are gonna complain for nothing new, intuitive, or interesting happening. That you're doing the same thing. They already added some new things to the game, but they're gonna be adding them a much, much slower pace. Because you can't... this scene is unskippable. Boo. Exactly. Like, You need to understand, MSQ shouldn't be where you find it fucking innovation of gameplay. That's not gonna be where you're gonna find it. You're gonna find it in Criterion, in Variant, or some other places. But it's definitely not gonna be like in MSQ. MSQ is gonna give you something, but it's not gonna be that fucking wild or interesting. Because at the end of the day, it's just a story. It's a story you could just retell to someone. That's for raids, baby. Exactly.
That should have been a fight. Should have been this giant combat scenario, kind of in the vein or the style of, say, the final patch of the end of the Shadowbringers MSQ. Remember that, where we had that giant battle against Fandaniel? Something in that line of thinking.
Fandaniel was in Shadowbringer? Did I hear that right? Hold on.
Say, the feeling of it has to be good. The invasion of Tulio Lol, that should have been a fight. Should have been this giant combat scenario, kind of in the vein or the style of, say, the final patch of the end of the Shadowbringers MSQ. Remember that, where we had that giant battle against Fandaniel? Something.
Oh, I know the one he's talking about. Yeah, where you had to play as other characters as well. You had to play like as Alize, as Urianger. Yeah, I remember that part. Yeah, now I know what he's talking about. But no, Snoresville, USA. It was so dragged out. Look, look. I like Alize. She's a fun character. I wouldn't play her for longer than fucking 10 minutes though. I get it, but that was like specifically a specific patch to show a war. Here you're taking a train. Not everything should be an interactive combat scene. I don't know. I feel like he's just overthinking a lot of these things. And it's better to just be wanting more rather than just like having too much of it and having it unskippable.
In that.
Like there's a reason a lot of the MSQ has been like simplified.
That line of thinking. At the end of the day, you need to be willing to take a risk, because you won't know what sticks to the wall and what people are receptive to if you're not willing to take that first step and take that risk. At the end of the day, it is my firmest belief that if you want a game to be fun and interesting mechanically, you have to have gameplay mechanics. There's a ton of games that are really hard that are a lot of fun. I love FromSoft games, but there's also a ton of games out there that are really easy but also a ton of fun. And at the end of the day, I think Final Fantasy XIV is a fun game. Like, I like playing the game. I like going after these boss fights. I like those fights against Bakul Jaja and Galul Jaja in Dawntrail. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the dungeons. I've enjoyed the trials. I've loved the raid. 14 can be a really fun game, but instead of like shying away from those components that they did quite a bit in the MSQ, they should lean into it and take a chance. They did it a little bit back in Endwalker, and you can even argue with like stuff like the Fancred fight in Shadowbringers, but I think there's underlying fear of having to make sure that everyone can get through it on like basically the first.
I don't think that's why they're doing it. It's not because the underlying fear that everyone has to get through it, and I don't believe this is specifically done because they're catering to newer players. You need to understand, like, the raid designers are separate from the story writers. There's pacing to a story. There's always specific beats to a story. They can't all be action. You cannot keep adding so much fucking action into the story. Because, like, the moment you start adding just one, you're going to be wanting more. You're going to be asking for another one over there, and over here, and over there. Oh, I'm here on the train. Or I'm here, I could fight Galulja. You know? Goljaja. One of the fucking Jajas. Jaja Binks. Maybe you want an interactive scene where you build the ship. Maybe you want to catch the alpaca yourself. I get it. But this is not Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This is Final Fantasy XIV, a 10-year-old game with a spaghetti engine that cannot keep innovating just because we want it to. Some things need to be, like, even like in cutscenes, you know when people walk? They walk slower than a normal fucking person, don't they? You know that slow-ass fucking walk where they take, like, one step? Second step. You know what I mean? It's like, there is particular pacing, and if you're gonna be adding combat or like interactive scenes like that, they need to be there for a reason. Just because you want to, you know, be on the turret and shoot some flying guys, it's like, chances are it would just ruin the experience, especially pre-dungeon.
first try, and this underlying fear of upsetting anyone out there that plays the game is a net detriment to the overall quality of the game going forward, because it limits creativity and it limits design, especially in terms of the MSQ and what it could be. Just because
Why are all these motherfuckers... Like, not to drag on the guy, but it's like, why are all these motherfuckers, like, point out, like, the most menial thing in the game? Something that's not gonna matter. Like, something that's nobody's gonna remember in a few months. Right? And they talk about it as somehow affecting the long-term health of the game. Or whatnot. No! Come the fuck on. No. Like, you know what's gonna affect long-term health of the game? If they remove Hrothgar ladies. Or cat girls. That's definitely gonna, like, kill the game instantly.
an idea was not executed all that well before does not mean the idea cannot be executed better or even way better in the future. And like, it's entirely possible that ideas like the Golemald escape section or the Thancred infiltration are just faulty conceptually. Like, that's entirely possible. I'm just saying, I don't think the resolution or the takeaway from that should be we should just not do these one like man instances ever again, or these situations that just involve you in a unique gameplay scenario. It doesn't need to be hard, but it needs to be more mechanically satisfying than just simply clicking to the next dialogue option. And I'm also not saying that Final Fantasy XIV shouldn't have a lot of cutscenes or a lot of dialogue. That is its core and its DNA at the end of the day. But like I said, with that line in the sand, I think there's always a point where you can, like, overshoot it. And I think Dawn Trail did. Doesn't mean I expect it to become like Doom or something, but there's just too many times in the Dawn Trail story where I'm like, oh, this would have been a really cool gameplay situation, and nothing happened.
I've never actually seen anyone like complain specifically about MSQ instance mechanics. This is definitely catching me a bit by surprise. Like, I'm even getting whiplash. You're reacting to someone yapping on B-rolls? Yeah. Don't worry, I have a call video next too. There's gonna be a call video. Ooh, we're back!
And going back to like the normal mode raids for a minute, when you introduce new ways to telegraph information or new mechanics wholesale, there's going to be some people where they need a bit of time to adjust to this new information and this new way of reading information. It comes quicker or slower to some people, and that's fine. But for a game like Final Fantasy XIV that is as old as it is, and that is planning to go even longer, shying away from doing new things mechanically and from a gameplay perspective,
I'm very fucking kind of confused. Like, the dude is clearly doing the normal raids. Unless that's someone else's fucking footage. But I'm gonna assume that's his, right? He is doing the normal raids. He's clearly done all the dungeons. Why is he talking about the lack of new mechanics? Have we not gotten any? we have gotten quite a few new mechanics in this patch. I'm like, are we really that desperate for fucking MSQ instance mechanics? Something fun and innovative and interesting, but not too simple. Sorry, he wanted specifically simple. My bad. He wanted simple for the more casual players, but he wanted to be interesting and innovative with good pacing and to be in MSQ at good points and make the story interesting. It's like, the more I voice it out loudly, I'm realizing he is not realizing how much work and how many other things this can affect.
Should not be the direction. And I think Dawn Trail in a lot of ways is trying to experiment with a lot of new things mechanically, at least in terms of fight design, and I think that's a really good thing. I think Dawn Trail has been one of their best expansions, if not their best expansion, in terms of the actual gameplay, in terms of the actual boss design, these dungeons, these fights. They're really damn good.
Okay, so they're good. Then what the fuck? Then we are just literally complaining about... Is this a 16-minute video specifically about the MSQ instances? I want to be on the side of more casual players. I want to be on their side. But some of the things people are analyzing and criticizing or complaining about, I feel like, I don't know, like... What the fuck?
I just hope that one day this design can translate and this level of risk taking can translate itself to the MSQ outside of just dungeons. Because I think that'd be pretty cool. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.
Did he play Metal Gear Rising recently, and this is where this shit is coming from? Is this where this shit is coming from? I don't know. It's like, I can see his point, I just genuinely don't fucking agree with it. I feel like he is hanging on to very menial and unimportant things that like can easily ruin the rest of the story. Otherwise, it's like just like make these things, but make the story around them. I don't know. The sad thing about the casual side of things, they like to complain but offer no solution, nor can most of them truly name what they are angry about. I know, yeah, that is like a very constant with the more casual community. They will complain about things, and it's like, yeah, okay, you don't like this? What do you like? What do you want? Oh. I don't know, there's no examples here. The only example I heard is like, I want to do the turret same like I did in Golden Saucer. Then go the fuck to the Golden Saucer. But I want these mechanics to also be interesting and, you know, for them to take risks, to innovate, but also keep them simple. It's like, and it trails on and on and on and on. It's like the more like adjectives are added to the issue, the more you realize this person hasn't exactly thought this through. Not to judge the guy, but it's like I genuinely do not agree with this. I just do not. Oh, I like that.